ESPN 1080 The Team, the home of Florida State football, and this is the ESPN 1080.com Insider Special FSU Podcast. Myself, Eric Lopez, alongside Andrew Melnick, season ticket holder, FSU alum, and we'll do some FSU podcasts from time to time here on ESPN 1080 The Team and ESPN 1080.com to kind of talk FSU athletics and football and basketball in particular, since this is the home of FSU football and men's basketball. And Andrew, another year of Florida State football is here, where this is it, game week, as FSU will host Louisiana Monroe this Saturday. Yeah,
it's extremely exciting. The first time there's been realistic expectations where there could be a top 5, top 10, maybe even national championship type finish really in years. I mean, I know they've been preseason top 5 a couple times back in 05, maybe even 06, but really those expectations were clearly not realistic. They didn't have good quarterback play. They had nothing on the offensive line, terrible play calling. The infrastructure had fallen apart under Bobby Bowden's regime. So things have changed now, though, and we've got high expectations.
This was a team last year in first year under Jimbo Fisher, won 10 games, lost in the ACC title game, but beat Miami and Florida for the first time in the same year since 2000. Won the bowl game in the Chick-fil-A Bowl in Atlanta against South Carolina.
Good South Carolina team.
And now this year they come in as the preseason number 6. High expectations. They're the ACC favorites.
Yeah, and I think they should be. I mean, they've got 8 starters coming back on each side of the ball, a ton of guys who have played a lot of football for the team, and there's no other team in the ACC that really brings back the type of talent that they're bringing back. Virginia Tech, you look at them, they're, I think, a pretty clear number 2 in the division. They lose both their running backs, Darren Evans and Ryan Williams. They lose Tyrod Taylor, who was fantastic at the end of the year. I mean, I don't think you have to tell Florida State fans after how well he played against them in that championship game. You got the problems in Miami. Clemson's replacing the quarterback and replacing guys like Jarvis Jones and Daquan Bowers. They have Brandon Thompson coming back, of course. I mean, there's a lot of talent that's been lost in this conference, and Florida State didn't lose a whole lot outside of maybe Rodney Hudson, Ryan McMahon, and Marcus White, who, outside of Rodney Hudson, are guys that should be pretty replaceable.
Let's go. Give me your thoughts. What do you expect to see out of this offense? You'll be there for the opener against Monroe. E.J. Manuel, of course, replaces Christian Ponder, who went to the first round of the NFL draft to the Vikings. E.J. Manuel will lead this offense. What do you expect from this offense?
Well, I think there's a couple questions right now. They lost Taiwan Easterling. I think that he wasn't a supreme talent. It's a guy who made some big third down catches, a lot of production they're going to lose for him. So you want to see another wide receiver step up. We saw Willie Halstead and Rodney Smith kind of take over those roles late in the year. Willie Halstead has been banged up. Rumors are he has another concussion, which would obviously be a bad thing considering he got one last year. But you want to see who's going to be really that fourth guy to go with them and Burt Reed. In the spring, it was Jared Hagens. We've heard good things about Greg Dent. You got the freshmen, Rashad Green and Kelvin Benjamin. And, Christian Green out of Tampa Catholic, who injured his shoulder last year and had to redshirt, who was one of the most highly sought-after receivers the year before. He might be the most talented of all of them. So you're looking for that fourth guy to step up. And at running back, it's going to be fun because we're going to get to see the freshman, Devonta Freeman, who came in earlier in spring, an early enrollee, and you got James Wilder Jr., who out of Plant, who was one of the top recruits in the country. Everyone knows about him. Chris Thompson, hurt, has not returned to practice with his back injury. Jermaine Thomas has been banged up his whole career. So Ty Jones, who's had problems with diabetes and other injuries, is really your only experienced back, and he could be the only experienced back suiting up next week. We'll see what happens. So running back's going to be interesting to watch. And really, the offensive line, as long as you've got those tackles, Seabree Sanders and Andrew Dacko, who both missed spring, if they're both healthy, you're going to have a very good offensive line.
Of course, FSU last year had the number 1 recruiting class coming in. One of the names, James Wilder Jr. What is his role going to be with this team?
It really depends. I mean, he's coming in, wants to play running back. A lot of people have thought maybe linebacker, maybe fullback. They're going to let him go at running back. And as of right now, with all they got coming back, if Jermaine Thomas gets healthy, Chris Thompson gets healthy, you got Ty Jones, Devonta Freeman from Miami Central, we got a huge leg up on James Wilder from being there all spring and getting a lot of reps in the game and in practice. So I think James Wilder is going to be mostly a short yardage back in garbage time.
Wow. Would they redshirt him or change positions? What's more likely with him?
He's not going to redshirt. I don't think that's going to happen. Position change could come in the future, but as of right now, he's a running back.
Let's go to the defensive side of the ball there, and they're going to definitely make a lot of teams choke up a lot. As Mark Stoops improved that defense from last year, and they got some nice young talent coming in this year. They certainly a team that 2 years ago struggled defensively, was in the low 90s, hundreds ranked. Last year they were in the 40s, big, number one in the nation in sacks. Your thoughts on this defense in 2011?
Yeah, they still weren't great last year, but they were so much better than the year before that I think we could see that kind of improvement again. And you lose Marcus White, but you got Bjorn Warner, you got Tank Carradine coming in from junior college. Linebackers, they lose 2 stars, but they bring back their leading tackler, Nigel Bradham. Got a couple guys, Telvin Smith, Christian Jones, highly sought after last year. Vince Williams looks like he's going to be the starting middle linebacker. It should be a much improved defense.
Let's go through, of course, the Seminoles will open the season against Louisiana Monroe, 3:30 kickoff, a game you can hear right here on ESPN 1080. Gene Deckerhoff, William Floyd. They will take on Charleston Southern on September 10th at 6 o'clock. 2 gimme games. Your thoughts on the philosophy of Jimbo Fisher opening up with those 2 games at home?
I'm a fan. I know a lot of people like to see, some of these other games be played, but when you're playing Oklahoma out of conference and you're playing Florida out of conference, and they'll have games like this for the next few years, USF and West Virginia next year, then a return trip to West Virginia the following year, and you're going to have Florida in there every year, who should improve from last year under Will Muschamp the next few years, and they're bringing in comparable recruiting classes to Florida State right now. So I think you do these kind of things. You tune up. Now Oklahoma's at an even bigger advantage. They'll tune up with Utah State and then have a bye. So they're going to be completely healthy. But for Florida State, I think this is a good chance
Oklahoma's
to get...
got Tulsa.
And then they have a bye.
Yeah.
Utah State, they opened up with last year,
Yeah.
Florida State, now, though, they're going to have a chance to get guys like Jacoby McDaniel, starting defensive tackle, healthy. Get freshman Nick O'Leary healthy. Get Chris Thompson, their leading rusher from last year, healthy. I think that's an opportunity to do that and get some of these kids like Devonta Freeman we mentioned, like maybe Kelvin Benjamin, Rashad Green, or some of these guys on defense. Tank Carradine, the JUCO defensive end, who's probably going to see a lot of time this year. Get these guys playing time before they see the number 1 team in the country.
Give me your thoughts. You're going to be there, obviously, for the opener against Louisiana Monroe. What should you expect? What do you want to see from this team on the field in the next 2 games? Obviously, everything goes to plan. They should win those 2 games handily. But give me some things to look for as far as signs that you want to see them do well in those 2 games.
Well, first and foremost, you want to see no further injuries. You want to see guys get healthy, and you don't want to see any more injuries. But as for what you want to see, I think you want to see a defense that shows improvement. I think you want to see a defense that's shut down, because we saw what happened with Oklahoma last year. That was an embarrassing defeat. Oklahoma couldn't be stopped. Similar thing happened against North Carolina. NC State in the second half ran wild. I mean, and the year before, we don't even have to talk about how many shootouts they had to get in because of how poor that defense was. So you want to see them play better. I think you want to see the interior of that defensive line, which has been undersized and a weakness for so long. You want to see how much bigger they look, and you want to see them get a lot of push in those games, and you really want to see the defensive line dominate.
That's Andrew Melnick, of course. I'm Eric Lopez. We're part of the Insiders here on ESPN 1080. A reminder, you can check out ESPN1080.com Insider shows every Sunday, 10 to 11 a.m. Eastern, here on ESPN 1080. And, of course, ESPN 1080, the home of Florida State football and men's basketball here all year long. We'll get to basketball news in a moment. Let's talk, though, this past weekend, high school football on ESPN networks. And you and I were talking off the air, a couple of recruits that FSU fans are quite familiar with.
Yeah, we saw a couple guys play Saturday on ESPN or ESPNU. Prattville, Alabama, lost a shootout, really good game to St. Thomas Aquinas, who's the defending national champion and Class 5A champion in Florida. We didn't see a whole lot of Justin Sanks, the big 300-pound nose that Florida State is getting. Looked like he was limping around a little bit. But in the later game, we saw Mario Edwards and his Denton Ryan, Texas team defensively dominate. That's a team that has 4 BCS players, seniors on their roster. Mario Edwards leading the way, defensive end, number 1 player in the country. We saw him have a sack and a forced fumble that led to a touchdown, a couple other big tackles for loss and sacks. And the thing that stood out for me is he's just a monster. I mean, 275 pounds in high school at defensive end. He's the number 1 player in the country, and I think he showed it.
Absolutely, and Jimbo Fisher keeps doing a great job getting those kids in. Seems like FSU and Alabama are battling for every top kid, it seems, every week. At least that's every week there's a rivals news, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. I mean, we mentioned Justin Shanks. He's from Alabama. You talk about the number 1 quarterback in the country, Jameis Winston, who committed to Florida State. He's from Alabama. Then you look at a guy like Chris Black from Jacksonville going to Alabama. You want to go back a couple years, Trent Richardson is a Floridian. Of course, he's from up in the Panhandle, which is almost Alabama territory anyway. But Florida State's got 4 top 150 commitments from Alabama. Alabama's got 2 from Florida. Really, with Jimbo Fisher being a Nick Saban disciple, so to speak, they have similar philosophies, so they're trying to get the same type of player.
Absolutely tremendous talent. Let's switch over to men's basketball. Actually made some news last week. Their schedule came out. They will, of course, some notable games. They will host UCF on November 14th in Tallahassee. First time those two programs will play in 23 years. I have an article about that on ESPN1080.com you can check out on the insider section of the site. They will they go to Florida on December 22nd. They will be hosting College Game Day this year when they take on North Carolina in the ACC. Give me your thoughts on the basketball schedule.
I like it. It's finally a real basketball schedule where you do not necessarily have to get 21, 22 wins, because it's going to be a real schedule where you're playing some serious teams. I mean, I like the way they've done things this year. They always play in the ACC Big Ten Challenge, of course. They had to play Ohio State the last couple of years. And, since the conference wanted to make it easier on them, they'll be at Michigan State this year. I mean, a power almost like no other with Tom Izzo. But it's a season where, surprisingly over the last 5, 6, 7 years, Florida State has had the third best record in the ACC. I think that's been overlooked a little bit because the way they lose games is just they lose a lot of games they shouldn't lose where there's just no offensive execution. Happened in the Sweet 16, a game they should have won. There's no execution down the stretch, no clock management, no nothing. But as for the schedule, I like. I mean, UCF, kind of a dangerous team to play. They're assembling talent there, as we know. They beat Florida last year. But I like what they've done with the schedule. I like it better than anything we've seen the last few years.
They also go to the Bahamas for a tournament where they'll play UMass. Could play UCF there for a second time.
UMass, too. My oldest sister went to UMass, actually. A little family battle.
Big family battle there. All right, closing thoughts, Buckman. Now we go back to football. Of course, we'll get more men's basketball as the year goes on. But football, Louisiana Monroe, big win.
Oh, yeah, 62-10, something like that.
Beautiful. Well, enjoy the game. That's Andrew Melnick. I'm Eric Lopez. This has been an ESPN1080.com Insider Special FSU podcast. Keep it here on ESPN1080.com news for all the information on FSU. And a reminder, ESPN 1080 The Team is the home of Florida State football starting September 3rd when FSU takes on Louisiana Monroe. We thank you for tuning in. Goodbye.